So welcome to the day 9 session of APM with Python. Today we are going to talk about the concept of unit testing. We are going to have an introduction to PyUnit, which is the unit test framework for Python. Like you have got JUnit for Java or NUnit for .NET languages. And then we are going to have a look at the structure of PyUnit and the usage. So when we are going to design our test in APM, we are basically going to use this structure after a while to start providing a structure to our test and then execute those programs. So what is unit testing? So unit testing is done to identify bugs early in the development stage of the application when the bugs are less recurrent and less expensive to fix. So generally we prefer to do unit testing at that time. So the unit testing aspect is basically taken care by the developers, and there are different types of frameworks available in different languages to help us provide this structure. So a unit test is a scripted code which effectively tests a small functionality, and it is an object oriented framework which is based around something called as test fixtures. What is test fixtures? Test fixtures effectively help us structure our test into different sections. For example, the three types of test fixtures which are primarily used are setup, which is like whenever like we have written a manual test case, sometimes what we write is called as the preconditions, what we would like to have before we start testing. So setup is like a precondition. Then we have got the actual test. Actual test is the steps which we take to test the functionality. And what we have next is basically a tear down method. The purpose of the tear down method is to clean up, or it's also known as your post condition. So once you set up your system so that a test can take place, then you basically perform the actual test steps, and then you have the tear down method to effectively clean up the system and prepare it for the next execution. So these are test fixtures which are generally a part of a unit test which we design for our program. Is this clear? Okay, great. So what is a structure of a PyUnit scenario? So what we have is a test case. Test cases become a part of test suite. Test suite becomes a part of test runner, and test runner basically produces test result. Test case can also become a part of test loader. Test suite can also become a part of something called as a test loader, which again goes to create a test suite, then goes for execution in the test runner class and produces the result. So at the basic level, what we create is a test case. A collection of test cases forms a test suite. A test suite is executed using the test runner class, which produces your test result. Few of the test cases can also become a part of something called as a test loader, which is then again sent to test suite, which is sent to test runner execution class and produces test result. So test case class basically bears the test routines, and it provides us information for setup, tear down and the actual test for every individual test. Test suite class is a container class and it possesses multiple test case objects. Test loader class basically loads the test case and suites which are defined locally or from external file. The test runner class run the test. It caters to standard platform to execute the test. And the test result is the class which contains the execution result, which you can then further have a look at. So these are your different entities of a unit test structure. So what are my steps to create a unit test? We have to import the unit test module in our program. We have to define a function which we would like to test. We have to create a test case by subclassing unit test.test case. I hope you understand the subclass word now. What is subclassing? Where we learned it? Do you remember the concept of inheritance? Yes. So subclass is a child class. So we create a child class of this unit test case module. Then inside that we define a test method. Test is the method where actual steps to perform the test will take place. Each test has an assert function which is like validation. So there are two aspects of a test case. One is the steps which are available. The second is the validation of the performed steps. And finally, we have got the main method to call the unit test. So this is how we create a unit test. So the methods or the test fixtures which are available are set up, run and tear down, which I just explained to you guys. So let us have a look at our very first unit test which we are going to create. Just a minute, I'll be back. 1 minute, please. So we are going to have a test created and we will try the same on our systems. So what we do is we say import unit test and we create a function called as the add function which takes two arguments x and y, and the simple thing it is going to do is it is going to return x plus y. Okay, so it is going to add these two numbers and return it. Then we create a class called as simple test which inherits from the unit test.testCase module. Inside it we create another function. The purpose of this function is to effectively assert the output of the add function. So in the assert equal method, which is an part of our unit test case module, we call our add function and we want to assert whether the output of this add function is same as 9 or not. Then we call our main method. So when you run this program, it will execute this unit test and it will tell you that it has executed one test and the output is okay. Let me give a bad output. Now when I run this test, do you see that I receive an assertion failure? It shows me that there is an assertion error, 9 is not equal to 10, and I get a failed message. Okay? So this is what it helps us get information of. I'm sharing this code Please understand that when I share this code, one or two things might get missed. Just ensure that you have these underscores properly created and not miss them. Okay, just ensure that when you are copy pasting this code you do not lose these underscores. These are like predefined keywords in Python, and that's how we recognize a class and a main method of the class. So go ahead, try out this simple unit test program in your system. If you have any questions, let me know. Works? Okay. Any question? Please ask if you have a question. I declared a method add. Yes, I did that. And then I created a unit test. Inside the unit test, I created another method to test the method which I created, which was add. Line number 10 and 11, Samir. This is basically calling the unit test main class. So what this line does is it effectively calls this function. When it calls this function calls the add function. So the method is supposed to call all the functions defined inside this class. Unit test is a library or a module which has got a class called as test case. Our class simple test inherits from the test case class. When it inherits from the test class, the feature function set inside the test class becomes available for simple tests, like this method assert equal. Make sense? Let's try another example. In this example, what we are going to do is, we are going to create our test case class where we have available a setup method, that is our precondition. We declare two variables in here and we say that the name, there is a variable called as name. The purpose of this name is to basically be assigned a value from self.short description. From where this short description is going to come? The short description is going to come from these lines. Line number 21, line number 25. This is how you provide short descriptions to a method. So there are three variables which we create, A, B and name. Then we have written a code inside the setup method only, that if name is equal to add, we want to declare two variables with the value 10 and 20 and we want to print name with self.a and self.b. If the name is equal to subtract, we want to assign the value 50 and 60 and print that information. And then you have got the tear down method. When will tear down get called? Tear down gets called after the run method is executed. Then we have created our test add method, test subtract method. We provide our short description. Here we evaluate the variable result, which is equivalent to self.a plus self.b, and we assert whether the result is equivalent to 30 or not. Similarly, we declare another method, test subtract, where we are subtracting a from b and we are asserting whether the result is minus 10 or not. And then outside the class we are calling its main function. The main function will execute the test in the order. It will first call the setup method, then it will call these two individual methods, and then it will call the tear down method. That's the order the test fixtures get executed. So when I run this program, I get an output like this. It is going to basically print that it is adding 10 and 20, which is coming from this information. Then it is printing end of test. In between it has evaluated this assertion. That's why you get the result as OK. Then it calls this line. It prints that it is trying to subtract 50 from 60. The test is executed successfully, then you print the output. Again, let us try to give a bad output. If you give a bad result, you get a failure. So it says add 10 and 20, end of test add, output is F, fail. If you look at it, says it has a failed method, test add. This is a failed method. Assertion error, false is not true. So assert true, result is equal to 20, result is not equal to 20. This gives the boolean output of false. So this is not true. So this is another way to execute a test method inside a unit test module. Okay. So another way to test a function or test the operation and assert its information. So in our first program we created a method, then we created another method to test it. In here we basically created a structure of setup, run and tear down, and we used the concept of short description to identify which method are we going to call for testing, whether the test add method or test subtract method. Accordingly that method is called and our information is provided to us. Make sense? Were you able to understand this program? Okay, if there is a problem with any line, you need to help me understand which aspect is you are not able to be clear on so that I can help you understand. Why do we repeat the variables a and b within the setup? We are not repeating the variables a and b within the setup. We are providing data to these variables. This is our initial data. Okay, you can give an initial data of, let's say, 0. You are initializing the variable. This is initialization. After the initialization, when we say that if the name or the short description is add, we are assigning value to it. For the add function, we want 10 and 20 to be taken as the data point. For subtract function, we want 50 and 60 to be taken as a data point. We called it, when we declared this test method, test add and test subtract. See, remember this structure. There is a structure which is associated with the unit test. I explained that before I started talking about it. There is a setup method which is precondition. Then there is a run method where you basically have declared your test functions, and then there is a tear down method. Whenever you call the main function of your unit test case which we have created, it executes the test in this order. So this test add and test subtract will be called after the setup method is called. So setup method is first called. It calls the add method and subtract method, and then it calls the tear down method. For every test method created, the setup and the tear down will be called. That's why, let me give it a correct output. That's why you see this output. For every test method, the setup and tear down will be called. Okay? Okay, Maria. For every test method created, the setup and tear down method will be called. If you have a question, you can ask me. Sure. When we call the main function here, when you are calling the main function of this unit test takes a structure. It will first call the setup method associated with the class, then it will call the test method, and then it will call the tear down method. It will do so for every test method created in here. Setup is like precondition, the initial information which has to be executed. Then we have got our test methods, and then we have got our tear down methods. You know C sharp as a language, right, Samir? Have you ever used NUnit there? Okay. In NUnit, how do you design your test? Set up, test, and tear down, right? Yes, annotations. Annotations are also called as fixtures. So these are your annotations, setup, tear down, and these actual test methods. So whatever is a test has this test keyword associated with it to identify. Same thing, simple test is a class which we have created for the unit test case. You are asking why there is no setup or tear down method in here. They are not required to be created every time. This is not mandatory. In Python, this is not mandatory. To execute a unit test, you require a method which you have to execute, the test method. Setup and tear down are something which are optional. If you have it, great. If you don't have it, no worries. But you should have a test method. The actual code, Marian, is this test add and test subtract, which is calling these operations of addition, subtraction, and then asserting the output. The setup and the tear down is like precondition and postcondition, which gets called up before every test method is going to get called, and after a test method is done being called, the tear down gets executed. Okay, Samir. Marian, I'm going to give you an example. Your understanding is almost correct, but the jargons which you are using to explain your understanding are a little jumbled up. So I'll try to make you understand a few things. Okay. In testing or in automation specifically, the start and the end of the test should always be same. Okay. Let us say we have an application which has got this login functionality and it has got two test cases which you want to execute: valid login and invalid login. Okay, fine. The steps to execute valid login and invalid login will be slightly different. What aspect will be different? Data, definitely. And then the flow of execution will be different, because once you provide an invalid login, it is not going to go to the login screen. It will tell you bad credentials. But before you perform valid login and invalid login, there are certain steps which are basically similar. You have to open the application and you have to go on the sign in page. Similarly, the step which will be performed after you have performed the valid login and invalid login, which is tear down, is going to be same, which is like close the application. So your what in here is your actual test? Is your actual test this, or this? What is the actual test? This is the test. Before valid login gets called, the setup will be called, tear down will be called after. So basically the order of execution becomes like this: setup, test, tear down. This becomes the first test method. The second, again setup will be called, then the test will be called, and then the tear down will be called. Now it is entirely up to us that would we like to set the username password here every time a setup is called by declaring the variables, or you would want to do it in here. So for our very first program, we were doing it in here. For the second program, yes, you are right, we are declaring the data which is going to get called in the test method here. So when it says if name subtract, from where will it take the name subtract? When it is executing this test method. So if the name of the short description associated is subtract, these two variables gets initialized, this is printed, this is executed, and then tear down gets executed. Does it make sense? Great. Sure. So we'll take a small question and you guys have to design a unit test around it. Very simple question on the similar lines which we have seen so far. So create a method find greater, find smaller. So there are two methods which you have to create. Find greater, find smaller. Design unit test around it. Okay. You can take any approach, whichever you like. If you want to take the first approach, take the first approach because that would be a little simple program for you to write. If you want to take the second approach, I have shared the screen. You can take the second approach. The first approach code is with you guys. Take any approach which you want and design this unit test and share the code with me. Take around 10 minutes for it. Go ahead and do it, please. So that's good, Marian. Samir, are you trying or will you try later? Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Here we are going to have a look at how we can create a test suite. So what we do is we import our unit test module and we create a class called as suite test, which is inheriting from unit test or test case. Inside the setup method, I declare two variables a and b. I provide them with some values. So we have got a test add method and a test subtract method. So the test add method has the short description of add, test subtract method has a short description of subtract. Here we provide our variable result and we assert it. Similarly, we assert the operation after subtraction. Then we create our method test suite. Inside this method, we basically create a suite object of unit test test suite type. We call two methods associated with the suite called as add test, where we basically add the test add method and test subtract method and we return this suite. In the main method, we create an object of our test runner class because that is the class which is required. That is the class which is required to be executed to execute the test suite. So we create this runner class. We create this test suite variable which effectively calls the tsuite method, and then we use the runner.run method to execute the test suite. The runner.run method will basically go and have a look at the suite object. It will find out there are two tests available. It will execute these two tests and provide us with the result. So when we execute this test, this is the output which we get. Okay. So what we have done in here, we have created a test suite which contains two test cases. We execute these two test cases one by one or one after the another. Okay. So let us try to give a bad output so as to fail a test. So when we give a bad output and we fail a test, we get our assertion failure message. So you can also look at this PyUnit console to figure out what test got failed. So the suit test sub method got failed. Or you can look at the console to provide the same information. So this is how we execute a test suite. Any questions in here? Any question in here? So we will now look at the result module. To understand the result module, we again create a class. This time this class has got four methods: add, subtract, multiplication and division. We create a suit variable to add these four test cases. Add these four unit tests inside the suit variable. Then we call the runner class to execute this test suite. The output of this runner is stored in this object result. Now you can use the different attributes associated with the result object to print information like result errors, result failure, skipped, whether the result was successful, and the test runs. So there are different attributes which are available with the test result object which gets created as an output when the runner is executing the test suite, and you can basically fetch different information associated with it. So when you run it as a Python test, these are the outputs you get. You get total number of run were 4, there was one failure. It tells you which method got failed, whether the result was successful is false, total number of test runs were 4, any result got skipped, no. So these are the different attributes which are associated with the result object. Let do good morning. बैठो मम्मा आ रहा है देख लो. So these are the different attributes which you can use from the result object which gets created, or you can use it for the reporting structure to basically print the information associated with this result object. Okay, is this clear? Any questions in here? Okay. So that's all we have for Python as a language to discuss. From next week onwards, we are going to start with the APM. I have already shared the process to install the required software for the APM with you guys in the initial starting scenario. I just want you guys to ensure that your systems are set when we meet next, and you should have an Android device available preferably, otherwise you can work on an emulator. So if you have any question regarding the APM setup, let me know. You should have the Android Studio installed. You should have set the Android home variable. You should have the APM server available, and you should have an Android device available, otherwise we will work with an emulator. Okay, so the steps to set up this these softwares to start with APM was shared in the initial time. So ensure that all this is set up and working on your systems before we meet next. Okay, do you have any questions regarding the setup? B is an Android home variable which we have to create. So we all have system variables available in our system. So this is the system variable called as Android home, which has to be available. This, it's basically the path which is available on the machine where your Android SDK is installed. So we require this as a variable set at the system level. If you have an Android device available, it is good. Otherwise, we can use an emulator to do our test. Okay. So ensure these things are available. Rest we will do when we start working in class. Samir, you had a question which you wanted to talk about. Go ahead and let me know.
Yeah, actually, is it possible for you to create a Google Drive and put all the documents there along with the video link? Because sometimes I'm missing your emails. So I will be checking the Google Drive and I will be taking the things from there. And also, if it is possible, can you put the link for the class also? I mean, webinar link so that I can take it from there, because today also I was waiting and I didn't receive it, and I received it around after 15 minutes.
See, regarding the Google Drive creation, I do not have the required space available because
In the Google Drive?
yeah, that's pretty much full for me right now because there are a lot of other courses which are running. And anyways, we do not keep this information in the drives. We basically are going to delete it after the session is over. So you need to have information available on your system or on your mails. What is the problem with the receiving of an email? You either have the mail on your mail or you have it in your spam. Have you unblocked my ID? Have you unblocked the info ID from your email to not to go into spam? Have you done that setting?
Yeah, I have done it, but still it is going there. I don't know what is going on because I've added to you my contact list. I went to spam folder couple of times and marked it as not a spam.
You
But
have to give
should I?
24 hours before the mail is received to you. Sometimes I do not uh, get time to immediately send you emails because video recording change. The when we record this GoToWebinar video, it has to be converted to a format. So you have to basically give 24 hours time before you expect an email to be sent to you regarding the last session. And these mails have attachments. There are code files. So sometimes Google might filter and throw it in your spam. Second thing regarding the link, uh, the problem with the link is that the GoToWebinar software is misbehaving for past 2 weeks now. I have contacted the support. So at the last minute, I am bound to change the link for joining the webinar. I waited for you for 15 minutes to join Sameer for today. I sent you two WhatsApp messages on your number. I sent an email. And if you have a Skype ID, you can give it to me because the same problem will appear in the Google Drive as well. Okay? So you can share your Skype ID with me. The last I can do is I will share the Skype information on Skype with you. So around that time when the class is going on, we have around 6, 7 more classes left. I am in touch with GoToWebinar so that we don't face this issue again. And once you guys have received the link on Friday, the link stays. But for the last two sessions, at last minute, I am having troubles where I have to change the link information. So this is something I am not able to help at my end. So if you have a Skype ID, also share that with me. I'll share on Skype as well. And I generally wait for both of you for quite some time that you both have been logged in and then I start the session.
Okay, I will share you my Skype ID as
Yeah,
well.
just mail me your Skype ID and give 24 hours time for the email to be received to you. Otherwise, please feel free to send me the message. I'll reply back. But within 24 hours, the mails are sent from my end. So give it a
Okay.
day. Okay. So APM is basically how will you find where your Android SDK is? Once you install Android, read this link, Marian. We basically were able to solve the problem with your terminal temporarily. And I would like you to stick to that temporary solution for the time being before we are able to fix it at the bash level. So leave it at that point, please, and read this link. If you face any challenges, let me know. We will then fix a time and figure out how do we solve it. So please follow this link to set up the Android SDK path. This is both for Windows and Mac, so should help both of you. Rest, as and when we are going to face challenge with the setup, if any, we will iron out as we face it. But please ensure that the instructions which are sent to you have been followed, and at your level you have set your system so that we can start working with APM. Okay, so that is important before we meet in our next session. So what I will do is I will drop you guys an email about expectation of the GoToWebinar link. If in case the only way possible for me for the time being is to send you guys the link 10 minutes before the session, I will inform it to you so that you can check your, there are 3 platforms where I will be able to connect with you: email, WhatsApp and Skype. So just ensure that if you receive an email that I am unable to fix the GoToWebinar problem in the time being, then I have your email and Skype, and for Marian an email and WhatsApp for Samir. You can share with me the other contact information I don't have so that I can post it there, and I will wait for you guys to join the session for 15 minutes. After that I will begin. Okay. So we will figure this out. There is no need to worry on this aspect. Okay, good to know that you have set everything. Just ensure you also have set the Android home. And will you be using any Android devices, or would you like to use emulator only? Emulator are generally pretty heavy on the system, so your system might act very slow, and you might face challenges. So it would be a request to have an Android device available if you can. Okay, great. Good to know that you both are comfortable with both of them. Great. Fine then, guys, that's all we have for today. Give 24 hours before you receive the recording email. Within that slot, you will receive it. And that's it. That's all we have for today. I'm adding you to Skype, Samir. Okay? Fine then. Thank you so much for your time. Take care. Have a good weekend. Please practice the concepts which we have learned. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me via email. I'll reply back to them. Try to complete all the Python related stuff this week so that you are clear with those programming concepts, because when we start with APM, we are going to shift our domain to a tool now instead of a language. So our perspective changes a bit. Okay? Okay then. See you guys next week. Bye everyone. Thanks.